Podcast number 778. This episode of Nerdist Podcast brought to you by the new NBC show Superstore, starring America Ferrera, Ben Feldman, plus Colton Dunn from Key and Peele, and also who's been on At Midnight a bunch, and who also does stuff at Meltdown.
It's so funny.
Brilliant improviser and sketch performer. And Mark McKinney from Kids in the Hall. More on that in a second. They're sponsoring this episode. But what do you have on the Nerdist Community Corkboard?
This girl named Laura McMullen is an expat living in Germany, and she is volunteering at a camp in Erding, Germany, which is housing Syrian refugees. And they get about 5,000 new refugees coming in every day, and she's writing this really interesting blog about it. That's called feedtherightwolftoday.tumblr.com. And she just has a bunch of info on it. She did make an Amazon wish list of things they need if you want to help out. But I suggest people go look at it because it's really interesting.
Excellent.
And she's got, she's living an interesting life over there.
Also for the corkboard, you can send to events@nerdist.com if you want us to mention whatever your passion project is, or your thing, or your work thing, or whatever. This space is for you. We want to share with you, as 2015 rounds out. There's going to be a Hostful podcast coming up. That's going to be up soon. And so we'll talk about, we'll do the year wrap up. This episode is Joe Kenda. And Joe, I begged to get on. He's on a show on investigation discovery. Okay. Now, I discovered his show Homicide Hunter with Lieutenant Joe Kenda because it's a show that Lydia used to watch with her dad when he was still alive. Her dad was a private investigator, and so they watched the show together. And one day it came on. She goes, "Oh, my dad and I used to watch this show." And this was maybe 4 months ago, and we got hooked.
Yeah.
And we have watched every episode, a lot of them twice.
Wow.
But basically, Joe was a homicide detective in Colorado Springs in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's not your typical true crime show because he narrates the show and tells the story. The reenactments are really good.
And he's telling you stories of things that
every episode is a case.
Oh, man.
Because he has this incredibly high success rate for solving homicides, like a 92% success rate. But he's so compelling, and he's kind of this noir character that you couldn't write. But he's so amazing, and he humanizes the whole process, and he doesn't glamorize any of it. I feel like we glamorize a lot of violence and crime in our culture, and he doesn't glamorize it. And it's just, he's such a real guy, and the reenactments are great. There's 5 seasons of the show, and we watch it every night we get to bed. We try to put on a Kenda, and I adore him, and I adore the show, and also you just feel empathy for the things that this guy has seen and what he's experienced. And he also, there's the one question. It's a little bit longer of a podcast, and I probably could have talked to him for 3 more hours. But he's such an interesting guy, and he's so authentic and so honest, and so open about his experiences. It's just, he's the kind of guest that we've never had on before in terms of the nature of his story and what he's related to, and that, having a homicide detective on to talk about homicide and how he processes it, just the point of view of a homicide detective. You take it for granted. How does a person get up every day and see the worst things that humanity has to offer and go home and have a family at night? And how do they process that? And so getting through all that, the one question I completely didn't get to was, he's took it upon himself to break the news to families. How do you go to a family and say, this member of your family is no longer alive, they were murdered, and we're investigating? And so he's such an endlessly fascinating human being. And this podcast was very meaningful to me because it was meaningful to Lydia and her life. It's meaningful to our lives. And we've been so touched by Joe and his story and that I just wanted to signal boost the show, let people know who Joe Kenda is. Homicide Hunter is on Investigation Discovery Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. It's also on Hulu. We bought all 5 seasons on iTunes. It's out there. So Homicide Hunter, Joe Kenda, Investigation Discovery Tuesdays at 9 p.m. I want to thank Investigation Discovery. Joe came out just to do the podcast.
Did he really?
Yes, he only came out to do the podcast.
And it was such a good interview.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you liked it. I was
just fascinated the whole time.
He's riveting. Joe is riveting. Because he's authentic. He's not, everything he says, you're like, oh yeah, well that's, he's such an open book and so authentic. I absolutely adore him. I'm going to stop gushing. I want to thank Joe and Investigation Discovery for having us out. And also, for sponsoring this episode of the Nerdist Podcast. Superstore, as I said, it's workplace comedy. It's on NBC. It premieres Monday, the 4th of January on NBC. You got your Colton Dunn from Key and Peele. You have America Ferrera. You got Ben Feldman, Mark McKinney. People are saying the show is amazing. It's hilarious. So watch it. Superstore, NBC, sponsoring this episode of the Nerdist Podcast. We would like to thank them for their sponsoring of this episode of the Nerdist Podcast, which is number 778, with Joe Kenda, Lieutenant Joe Kenda. Katie, you have the right to roll the thing.
Now entering Nerdist.com.
It's so funny because I've been in television for a long time, and I meet a lot of people. But it's still so strange that you're sitting here because I'm so used to. Literally every night that we get in bed, it's like we're gonna watch Homicide Hunter. 5 seasons. 5 seasons.
And they just signed for 6.
Oh, yeah, that's so good news! Oh, that's such good news!
So here we go again.
It's such good news.
They started filming the first week of February again.
Oh my God.
More.
That 20 more?
Yeah.
This is like the best Christmas present ever. We get 20 more homicides. Well, also, first of all, very sad that all those homicides happened. But
people misbehave.
They do misbehave. Yeah. So it is, it's really great to have you here because this type of show, I feel like, one of my favorite things about your show is you really humanize. It's like I feel like people are so desensitized to crime shows. We're so desensitized to violence. And when I'm watching you on the show and the camera is right in your face, I can see in your eyes and through the way that you're expressing the stories that it's not the same kind of, that kind of cavalier Law and Order, like, another dead guy. Like, you can see that it's real and that you've seen the worst things that anyone has seen.
I think that's, the other side of it is I don't have a script. I say whatever I want. Yeah. But when you live this work and you feel the work, I had that experience the first season I had. We started filming here in Hollywood. And then we went to Colorado to talk to members of the family. And there was a guy and 2 guys, Hollywood, supposedly hard-nosed guys in their 30s,
Right.
They've been around the block. They just haven't been around the same blocks I've been around, but whatever. They thought they were badasses.
Yeah.
So we went back to Colorado, and there's one particular family who lost their daughter and never got over it. Never. Okay. It happened this morning, even though it happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And her dad had not seen me for 20 years. So I told these 2 guys, I said, when they come here, this is going to be very emotional. Very emotional. So prepare yourselves for that. Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Right. Okay. The appointed hour comes for the interview. 10 cars pull in and 28 people get out, including the grandkids. And the father had his back to me. But I have a distinctive voice. And I said, hello, Jack. And he started to cry. Before he turned around. Because he recognized the voice.
Yeah.
And the whole family cried for 2.5 hours. When they were leaving, they were all hugging me and crying because I put the guy that did that to their daughter under a prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the 2 badasses from Hollywood. They're crying. And that's the director. I said, hey, Jason, welcome to Homicide.
Jeez.
Because that's what this is. Change those guys.
Well, yeah, of course.
Change them completely.
It's such an interesting format for a show because you're narrating, but then there's also this kind of amorphous God narration that's happening over the reenactments as well.
Yeah.
And the reenactments are really good. They're very well done. I think they're well acted. They're great. The guy who plays you, his name Carl
Marino. Yeah.
He's great, and it does not romanticize any of it the way that I feel like most crime shows do.
That's true, and I think that's the real failing, that we've taken homicide and made it the medium of entertainment. It's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's not what it is.
And does it make it? Is it hard for you to watch? I mean, like what types of shows do you watch?
I don't.
You don't watch shows?
No.
What do you do with your free time?
I read.
What?
I love to read.
What?
I do. Yeah, I love to read. And now, Kathy, my wife and I met in high school. We've been together all our lives.
Oh my God.
And so she's lived through all this as well, you know. And she had me watch a cop show once. And I was working then, and she said, I want you to watch this. Why? Well, I want you to watch it. Okay, I'll watch it. So then she said, well, is any of that true? No, none of it is. What? I said, well, none of it is. Well, I don't want you to watch with me anymore. I said, okay, I won't. I ruined the program, apparently.
No, it's not the way it is.
She asked me to tell her. I told her. She didn't like that. But yeah, of course.
The episode of your first big case in homicide, I can't remember what department you were in. What department were you in?
I was in burglary.
You were in burglary.
Yeah.
And you kind of shoved your way into the homicide department.
I did, yeah.
So that's
what I wanted to do.
Why?
I always thought that murder must be the worst crime, because the worst thing can happen to you for doing it. They're going to kill you, or they're going to lock you up forever.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do.
Did you learn what do you learn about humanity when you know that many, I mean, just so people know, if I'm getting the stats correctly, it was close to 400 homicides that you
387 that I had assigned. The numbers get bandied around a lot, and then people make mistakes. But I was assigned either as the detective or as the person responsible for 387 murders over my career. I solved 356 of those, which is a clearance rate of 92%. The national average runs around 60, sometimes 55%. So there's 31 cases I did not resolve. I still think about them all the time. One of them just got resolved through a new DNA process, so now I'm down to 30 out of the ones that I had. I wanted to solve them all. It all depends on how you look at it. I'm a really smart guy. If I was a football team and I played 387 games and I was 356 and 31, I'd be a dynasty. Or I'm just a dumb shit who doesn't know who killed 31 people. It depends on how you look at it, all right?
But there's something very specific about, because I think someone might go, well, I want to go into this line of work. I want to solve it. But then you start seeing firsthand what it is and what's entailed. Because the two parts of the job that I see on the show a lot both sound horrific, which is you're either doing a mountain of paperwork, and you don't get days off really. Your phone rings in the middle of the night because no murders are not on a schedule.
Correct.
And then you're going and seeing the worst things that happen in humanity.
And I would have done it for free.
Really?
Absolutely. My wife didn't feel that way, the free part, but no, I loved it. I didn't like it, I loved it. I saw it as a mission. If somebody does something absolutely horrible to someone else, you have two options. You can stand up or you can remain seated. I stood up. And I was proud of that.
And it was for the victims.
For the victims.
And the families.
No one else can speak for them except you. They can't anymore. You're the only defense they have for them losing their life. Why would you not want to do that?
What did you learn about when you said people committing the worst acts knowing that it comes with the worst penalties? What did you learn about people? Why? I mean, obviously a lot of the time it feels like it's just an in the moment sort of a thing, but a lot of times it's very premeditated.
And, at times it is calculating. That is not common. Calculation is not common, but it does happen. In the case of calculation, the perpetrator believes that he's a genius. The police will never figure this out because, after all, it's my plan. And I'm the smartest guy in this galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get away with it. No, you're not. I had a girl once who murdered her boyfriend's wife in a plot that they put together over a period of 8 months. The plan was to get insurance money that they were going to live happily ever after with, and she was going to leave her husband, and he would now no longer have a wife because they were going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were going to live on this money. And I unraveled this case in 2 days. Their plan was to make it appear as if it was a street robbery involving a male perpetrator wearing military clothing and a ski mask.
I saw this episode.
Okay. So when I'm interviewing her and she's confessing to this offense, so what did he say to you? Well, he told me the police are stupid and they'll never figure this out. They'll look for an armed robber that doesn't exist. And this goes on for a couple of hours. And finally, when it's all through, I said, okay, well, you're under arrest for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. And I only have one last question. What? Do you think the police are stupid? She didn't answer me. She's still locked up, of course, and so is he. But those kinds of offenses are not common.
The way you solved that, though, I remember the detail of the case that cracked that case, and it was genius, which was when they described, it was outside a community center, I think.
Mm-hmm. It was.
And
you got a good memory.
I do. I'm telling you,
I can make a policeman out
I
of
was
you.
not, pardon the expression, fucking around when I said we've seen every episode and some a couple times. So they come out into the parking lot, random, quote unquote, random street crime, the mask, the military, and one detail about the case caught your attention after like a day, I think, which is the perpetrator took the purse and put it over the shoulder, and you said,
over his arm.
Over the arm, you said, which is like a woman would do, not just like grabbed and ran away with the hand.
Correct.
And that led you to look at this.
To think about it another way. And when I talked to the witness, who, it's interesting, when you approach a witness, you have to be careful how you question a witness. You can't plant facts in their head. You can't ask a witness, how tall was he? People don't know that. They don't know. So you say, instead of that, you say, was he bigger than you, or was he smaller than you? That they know.
Yeah.
Right? So she said, well, he is smaller than me. How tall are you? Well, I'm 5'8". And this guy was smaller than you? Oh, yeah. When he ran away, how did he run? What do you mean? Well, did he run like an athlete? I mean, did he run like he knew how to run? Did he run, how did he run? Well, he ran kind of funny, like his shoes were too big. Like maybe he ran like a girl. She said, yeah, he ran like a girl. Thank you.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It all depends on, you've got to keep an open mind. You can't. The greatest mistake that gets made in investigations is people make up their minds what happened before they get there. They develop a theory of the case on the way to the crime scene, and you beat up the facts to match your theory. That's the wrong thing. You have to let the facts drive the theory. You have no idea what happened. You have no idea what happened. You know that somebody's dead, and somebody died violently. Why did they do that? I don't know. I would teach a class in police academy, and I'd put up a slide of a 37-year-old white female.
Ashley Bryant,
Multiple
you
gunshot
are a
wounds
teacher
to the
of
chest
small children.
on a
That's
city
right.
street.
I have
Had a
read
slight
it is
down
the
angle. So she gravity bleeds, so there's this river of blood from this woman. These are kids, boys and girls, just starting out in the police business. A lot of them never seen a dead body, let alone a violent death. And intake a breath, you put up the slide. So, what do we think? Multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. Now, did she die because her husband of 19 years was sick and tired of her buttering the toast on the wrong side? Or did she die because all blondes are she-devils from hell and they need to be eliminated? Could be either one.
Right.
Or anything in between. I don't know why she's like that. That's why we're here, to find out why.
How long did it... I mean, I wouldn't imagine that you ever get used to seeing any of it. But how long was it into the job before you were able to mash down your normal human reaction?
Of course. It's interesting you asked that question because I did a podcast recently on iTunes titled Detective. And there was 10 episodes. And one of the things I talked about on one of them was the first dead body I ever saw. I'd been a policeman all day. I was in uniform, I was driving a police car, my leather still squeaked, and I thought I had arrived, that I was going to put my nose to the grindstone, I was going to do whatever I had to do, and I was eventually going to get into homicide. I know you got to spend time in the street, so I'm here to spend time in the street, and then I'm going to work toward this other goal. So we get a call of a Hispanic female, 22 years old, gunshot wound to the head, been dead 4 or 5 days in an apartment in the summer. Oh. So I go there. There's other policemen there. And my heart's in my throat, and my pulse is going like a trip hammer, and I'm thinking, what am I going to see? What am I going to say? And you walk in, and here's a girl whose face is distorted by gunshot damage, who has blood that is now black, because it's been there for several days in the heat. There are flies all over her, all throughout the apartment. The odor is overwhelming, the odor of death. And I'm almost sick and almost unable to breathe. And the older cops are laughing at me. What's the matter, Kenda? Smell something bad. And everybody laughed. And I thought, you bastards, how could you think like that? How could you do this? And I walked back outside, and I couldn't see where I was going. I still couldn't breathe. I went home that night. I couldn't sleep. All I could see was her. I couldn't eat. I got back in that police car the next day, and I could still smell her in that car. Now, of course, I couldn't.
Right.
But I thought I could. And I'm sitting there thinking, maybe, Kenda, you need to rethink your entire plan about getting into the murder business. This is so horrible. And you look at the microphone, and you're supposed to say, when you get in the car, that you're in service, meaning you're available for calls. And my heart's in my throat, and my pulse is going at 150 beats a second, and I'm looking at that microphone, I'm not picking it up. And I said, okay, this is the moment. Did you do the right thing here? Yeah, you did. You fall off a horse, you get back on. So I picked up that microphone and I said, Fordham 21's in service. Roger, Fordham 21. Man with a gun, shots being fired. Here we go. Right? Fast forward 8 or 9 years. I'm a sergeant in homicide. Young girl goes to work. She has her first foray into employment. She's got a job in a mall, and she sells shoes. She's 16 years old, goes to high school, goes on Saturdays, and she sells shoes Saturday morning. Mall's supposed to open at 10 o'clock. She's supposed to be there at 10 for opening business. She goes there, all the stores are open except this one she works in. Chainmail's down, lights are out. What's going on? She goes in the service corridor. There's a back door, of course. She has a key. She opens the back door. The 34-year-old manager is face down on the floor in a literal river of blood. There's blood 8 feet across, 10 feet long, inch deep. Face down. She freaks. Calls everybody and their brother. Patrol shows up. They call homicide. I show up. I'm looking at this guy. There's a unique thing about humans when they die standing erect. If you are standing erect and you were shot with a surface air missile or run through with a sword or whatever, and you instantly die standing on your feet, and you fall dead. You're dead before you hit the ground. It's something called a dead man's fall. One foot will cross the other. Could be right over left, left over right, but 1 foot will cross over. So look at this guy laying on this floor, and his feet are crossed. Malls are built with a slight down angle to the floor in the event the sprinkler system goes off, the water drains out of the building. It's a very slight angle, but it's there. You can't really see it, but it's there. So when he falls dead on this concrete floor, he is 6'4", 230 pounds. He's a big guy. He breaks his face when he hits the floor. The orbits, the jaw, the mouth, the teeth, everything. But he's dead. He doesn't feel it, but he breaks his face. So now he gravity bleeds. He's probably been there all night, and all the blood in his body, 6 to 8 pints, depending upon the person, is now on this floor, making it look like he's been attacked by Jack the Ripper. And I told one of my guys, I said, when we move him, we're going to find a needle in his arm. Because I went over to his desk, and on the street, it's called a bindle, a pharmaceutical fold piece of paper that contains illegal narcotics. And it's folded over many times to prevent loss of the product. There's a spoon with a blackened bottom on it and a Bic lighter. And this guy is melting cocaine and he's injecting it IV. Jesus. Because snorting it isn't working anymore. So now we're going to do this. Okay. That kills you in a microsecond. Okay. Shuts you off like a switch. He stood up in that office and shoved that needle in his arm and croaked. And then fell and broke his face. I said, we turned him over, we're going to find a needle in his arm. They didn't have time to pull it out. Rolled him over, there's a needle in his arm. It is accidental death, drug involved. Okay? We had to add that to causes of death. In the 80s, this country has an insatiable desire to consume narcotics. They don't buy them from a pharmaceutical company. They buy them from some idiot on a street corner that might have cut it with rat poison or talcum powder or sugar or God knows what.
Right.
And you're going to stick that in your arm. Oh, that's a good idea. So this guy does this. We had homicide, suicide, natural, and accidental. Those were the 4 causes of death in this country. In the middle 80s, it became murder, suicide, natural, accidental, and accidental drug involved. There's no intent to die. You make a mistake. You ingest the wrong product. You put it in the wrong location, and it kills you. At that moment, those years later, my heart was not in my throat. My pulse was not hammering. I was professional, clinical, almost a doctor. There's this examination of what we refer to in the trade as the HR, the human remains. What killed this guy? He did. Injecting drugs through a needle.
Do you ever still, because it feels like, I feel like you've alluded to the fact on the show that it's very difficult for you to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because of being used to the phone ringing in the middle of the night, or is it just because of...
No, I have nightmares.
Nightmares?
Sure. My dead people come back and visit. You know, there's a movie, you know, with Bruce Willis, I think it was, Sixth Sense, where little kid says, "I see dead people."
Yeah.
Well, that was a movie. I really do see dead people.
Oh, man.
So my wife, who she's trained as a psychiatric nurse, and after I retired, and I was not doing well, when you're doing it, you're too busy to think about it. You're just too busy.
You haven't really processed it yet, right?
No, you haven't. But after you retire, then it's like, you know, So she looks at me and says, "You need professional help. You need to see somebody for PTSD because you have it big time." Yeah, you know. So I identified this guy who was a psychiatrist who's supposed to be the dude for PTSD in the state of Colorado. He's in Denver. Now, the health coverage I had doesn't pay for mental health issues. Very few do.
Oh, my God.
How long are you going to be crazy? Your leg's going to be broken for 8 weeks. I mean, we know that. So we'll pay for the broken leg. But what about nuts? Well, I don't know about that. Right? So no help. All right. So, okay, whatever. So I go see this guy, $400 to talk to this guy for an hour. I'm a policeman, a retired policeman. That's a lot of money, $400. So I paid him $400. Nice guy. Walk in, sit down. "Do you have recurring dreams?" "I do." "Can you tell me about them?" "Of course." "How many do you have?" I said, 5. "Well, could you recount them to me?" "Okay." So I do that for like 20 minutes. He starts crying. I am comforting him because he is so distressed about these dreams. I'm thinking 2 things. Who do I speak to about my $400 goddamn dollars? Right? Who is it that I talk to about that? And what's wrong with this picture? That's the other thing I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
So I leave. I walk in the house. Kathy says, "Well, how was it?" "Don't you ever ask me to do that again." She goes, "Oh my God, what happened?" I told her. So, geez. So about 2 months later, I was on a golf course. I play golf badly, but I play golf. So I'm on this golf course playing golf, and the chief of police is there, who used to be an LAPD homicide before he became our chief. He's quite a guy, and everybody in the PD called me Joey. That was my nickname, Joey the K, because my last name's Kenda, right? So everybody called me Joey the K. So he says, "Hey Joey, how you doing?" "Oh, good." "You sleeping, Joey?" I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "You know all that shit, Joey? It never goes away." And that was an epiphany for me. He's right. It never goes away. You learn how to deal with it. You learn how to deal with it.
I mean, it's amazing because because what people can't see from listening to an audio podcast is that when you're describing it, you're smiling about it almost as if you have made peace with this.
I have. His advice was free. The other guy cost me $400.
And you had to counsel him.
And I had to counsel him. I should have.
Sent him a bill for $450.
I got the money back.
Oh, good.
I did. I said, yeah. He said, "That or malpractice, what do you want to do?" Give him the money. Yeah, okay, fine, thank you. Sure, obviously it was pathetic. But yeah, that worked. And this show has helped me. It's kind of therapeutic in a way.
Oh, I would imagine.
I've told some of the things I've said on that to that camera. I've never told anybody before. A couple times, not all the time, but a couple times, my wife will watch the show with me. I'll watch it to make sure I'm not wearing a paper hat and riding a unicycle, and she watches it just to watch it. And a couple times, she's looking at me instead of the TV. I said, "What are you looking at?" She said, I never knew you did that." No, you didn't. I never told you.
You kept it from her on purpose.
Of course.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you go home at work? Yeah, I mean, I would do that sometimes. I'd go home, And we had 2 kids, right? She said, well, how was today? Oh, it was all right. What happened? Nothing happened. It was quiet. Yeah, it was quiet. I let it go at that, right? Then she turned the news on. I'd be on the news, talking to the press. Talking to 14 members of the press, on a crime scene tape, everything. She said, what about that? Well, yeah, there was that.
Didn't want to tell you about that.
And then the fight would be on, So, yeah, it's very difficult to. You want to protect her, and she doesn't want to be protected. She wants to know what you've done or what you're dealing with or whatever, And there were a couple of times when she was threatened by people that I had dealt with, and I got threatened 100 times a week. I'm still here, But on one occasion, somebody called the house, got the phone number, told her what color the carpet in the room was. Not good, And I had to send her out of town. Well, I found him, but it took a while. And that really spooked her, big time spooked her.
Well, yeah, because you're reaching into the drug community, basically.
Sure, and my work leaked into her work because she worked at a city hospital. And a lot of my clients were in there, had been shot or run over or whatever. And there was one occasion where I had a guy, very ugly case, and I had been home for 3 days. This is before the days of cell phones. She didn't know what I was doing. She knew it wasn't good, whatever it was, but she didn't know what I was doing. So I've been gone for 3 days. She goes to work in the morning, and she's a float nurse. So everybody called her Franny Float. She worked wherever they needed somebody. She's very skillful, and so she could go to ICU, she could go to ER, she could go anywhere in the hospital. If somebody called off sick or wasn't available, they needed help or whatever, they'd use her. So she's a charge nurse on this particular floor, and there was a guy, I think he was an orderly or something, but he'd worked at a hospital a long time, and she'd seen him and worked with him a couple of times. And she knew his name was Michael. That's all she knew. She didn't know his last name. Not that it would have mattered, but she didn't know his last name. So she comes into work, bebops in the door early in the morning, 6:45, and here's Michael standing there. Oh, hi, Michael. He gets a 1 inch from her nose. And he says, your husband killed my brother last night. And Kathy's pretty sharp, and she thinks on her feet. She said, well, I don't know what happened between your brother and my husband, but I know that you and I worked together for years, and there's never been a problem between you and I. Does this mean there's going to be a problem now? And he looked at her for a couple of minutes, and no. Then he walked away. And she was like,
holy shit.
Well, his brother was dead. I didn't kill him. I mean, technically I didn't. I mean, he killed himself. He had murdered 5 people in a armed robbery of 2 businesses and set one of the businesses on fire.
Jesus.
The ugly thing. I track him. It takes 52 hours to find him, and I find him. And I got his apartment surrounded with a SWAT team, and we quietly remove everybody from around the apartment and so on. And we call him on the phone. I'd rather him come out than us have to go in. And a girl answered the phone. We didn't think he had a girl. We had no information he had a girlfriend. He didn't have a wife. Our information was he lived alone in this apartment. But it turned out later we discovered this was an old girlfriend that stopped by and spent the night. Out of the blue, But this guy was a plumber, so he often got calls at night. So she had this girl's voice answered the phone, and you think, I've got the wrong number. Is Gilbert there? Oh, just a minute. Because she didn't think it was unusual that the phone would ring. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, but he's a plumber. He's on a 24-hour call, right? So he gets on the phone, and I said, hey, I told him who we were. We have warrants for you, 5 counts first-degree murder. I don't want to hurt you, Gilbert. And I don't want to hurt that girl. But it will hurt you. I need you to come out of that apartment. There's no way out. We have it surrounded. Come out. something to the girl. I couldn't tell what it was. And you hear her screaming, "The police! What do you mean the police are here?" She has no idea what he'd done. "Why are the police here?" And he picked up the phone again. I heard him pick it up, and he's breathing into the phone, panting almost. "You there, Gilbert?" "Nothing, You didn't understand what I said to you, didn't you?" And he shot himself over the phone.
Oh my God.
And a microphone in a phone won't pick up the sound of a gunshot. It's a flat noise because it won't peak to the actual noise because it's that cheap little microphone, So it's not like somebody whacking a 2x4 on concrete. It's a flat sound, not a gunshot, but but really loud, So SWAT hits it right at that moment because we don't know if he shot her, we shot himself, or we don't know. So when they kick it and they blast in there with the MP5s with the laser sights and everything, here's this girl standing there with her hands in the air, and she's covered in blood. It's not her blood, it's Gilbert's blood. And she's wearing a pair of panties and she's screaming like a Comanche Indian. This has not been a good way to wake up, right? And Gilbert had shot himself with a .357 Magnum, so his skull cap is in a bathtub and the rest of them's in the chair. And so he saved the taxpayers a lot of money. Good for him. So I didn't kill him. He shot himself. But Michael believed I was responsible.
Is there a common thread with people? Do they ultimately take responsibility emotionally for what they did, or do you feel like they...
No, there are people that do. There are people that do. There are people who are overcome by a moment of emotion and react violently against someone, and then are mortified by their behavior. They are truly sorry, but society won't accept your apology. Okay? They won't. But they truly are sorry. And if you recognize that in someone you're interrogating, a technique to get him to tell you, him or her, to tell you with the facts of the case. If you detect sincere remorse in their demeanor, in what they say, and how they're looking at you, how they carry themselves, put your hands on them. Humans want to be forgiven. Everybody does. And they'll take forgiveness even from you. You put your hands on them and you touch them.
Like on the shoulder,
on the shoulder, on the bicep, whatever. And you say, I know you didn't mean it. No, I didn't mean it. Tell me the rest.
And at that point, it's already, the floodgates are open.
Yes. They've gotten their forgiveness, in a manner of speaking, from me. I know you didn't mean it.
What about the ones who are just completely emotionally separated from the act?
Those people are also rare, people who are completely separated. Now, if you're a criminal, you understand there's punishment coming, so you want a lawyer. It's not that you're emotionally detached, you're cunning. You're not real intelligent, but you're cunning.
Mm-hmm.
You understand that there is punishment here. No, I won't need that. But the occasion, very rarely do you encounter someone who is truly a sociopath. Someone who really, truly doesn't care. And those people are really spooky to talk to.
Because there's nothing.
Zip. The only emotion that person is capable of is rage. He doesn't feel love, compassion, guilt, none of that. Doesn't feel it. Make him mad, he feels that. He feels that. Rage. A common thing with those guys, this happened to me once when I had a classic, he's on death row at the moment in Colorado. He is sitting there, I'm going to interrogate him in a murder case. He's already under arrest for multiple murders in another jurisdiction. I had him driven to my building because I think he's my guy in my murder case. So they put him in a room. He's cuffed and he's in a county jail outfit, He knows he's been driven for like an hour and a half to another police department to talk to yet another policeman about yet another murder, you know. Now, you would think you'd be pretty jazzed up if you were the guy who was going to be sitting in that room, but not if you're him. So when I walk in there, he's asleep.
I know this case too.
Yeah, that's Ronald Lee White.
Yeah.
He's asleep on his arm.
He just randomly killed a guy at a bar, out of the bar.
Yes.
I
gave him a ride home.
Yeah.
Then he killed him. Of course.
And he killed other people. And you said, and I remember the episode and you seemed genuinely kind of spooked by the guy because he didn't really have any.
He's a very different guy.
But that's rare.
Very, very, thank God, but very rare. He is also, interestingly enough, his death sentence was commuted by one of the governors who left office in a moment of largesse. They do that, you know. I now forgive everyone who ever got convicted and whatever.
Yeah.
So they inform him that he's no longer on death row. And he's going to do life in jail and he'll never get out, but we're not going to kill you. He is suing the state of Colorado, demanding to be executed.
Oh my God.
He don't like jail.
Do you think he's going to win?
No. But that's what he's doing.
Oh my God. I think it's also...
Oh no, we showed you mercy. I don't want mercy, I want to be dead.
They're fucking kill me. Yeah. But it's also interesting that I think when the average person thinks about, oh, the world is a dangerous place and you could get shot when you're when you really look at, when I watch 5 seasons of your show, it feels like random murders are very rare.
They are. They absolutely are.
There's usually an intention.
Of course. And you are at risk from someone you know more than you are from the world at large. People are driven in many ways by the media. The media beats the drum of violence. Violent crime in the United States has gone down every year for 20 years. Gone down. Now, the press doesn't like that because you lose a lot of audience when no one watches the news. So what happens in the modern day? And now the news brought to you by Chicken Little.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people all over the world are dead. People in North America are dead. People in your state are dead. People in your city are dead. People in your neighborhood are dead. And we'll be back after these messages, unless you're dead.
Yeah, because they know that people aren't going to watch the news if they go, hey, there's some bad stuff, but there's some good stuff. It's not that bad, you know.
No, it's bad.
Watch this, so find out how you won't die.
Yes, of course. We have a new threat today. You know, we have a new threat. We probably have another new threat at 11.
Yeah,
we have one now too.
But remember, we brought you the threat first.
Yes,
Action news.
Yeah, of course. We're in it. We love this. You know, okay, whatever. So you have people driven by that. They develop unreasonable fear, and people say, you know, the world's a terrible place. The world has always been, to some degree, a dangerous place. Of course it is. It would be nice if the world was a perfect place. It isn't. It just isn't. And it never will be. But there are certainly steps you can take to avoid being a victim of a violent offense. They're simple. Stay at a bar's at closing time.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing good happens after midnight. Okay. Do not buy, sell, or use narcotics or associate with those who do. And try to marry well. Don't marry a psychotic. And your odds of being a victim of violent crime are inch high. Do those other things or do them in combination and they're 6 feet high.
It goes up in what years were you? First of all, I was surprised. When Liddy and I started watching the show, we're like, I had no idea Colorado Springs was a hotbed.
It's not. It is an average crime rate. Consider the fact that these cases occurred over decades of my career.
When did you start?
I started in 1973.
And you retired?
98.
98.
Yeah, 96, but I was...
Okay, so
whatever.
23, 26 years.
Exactly.
Somewhere around there.
21 in homicide. So if you take that number of murders and you divide it by 21, and it works out to like 20 a year, which is average for the population. The murder rate in Colorado Springs is no worse than it is anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It's no better, but it's no worse.
Right.
It's right where it should be for the number of humans in a particular place. When you have humans in a place, there's going to be some trouble. Okay? That's the way things are. The more humans, the more trouble. It's a simple case of numbers. Now, the murder rate is kind of like the economy. It goes up and down. Mm-hmm. So you have good
sometimes
years, bad years. Economy. Yeah, sometimes with the economy. You have good years, bad years. When you have 1 year, you have 17. The next year, you have 29. Okay. You know? But it works out to where it's an average 20, 21 a year is about what you would expect to have in a city of that population. So, if you watch the show, of course, that's what it is, but it's over a long period of time. 21 years of homicide. That's a lot of years.
And you're also, when you watch the show, it's funny, even working in television, sometimes I forget when I'm watching a show, it isn't necessarily, you're probably working on a few cases at one time.
Of course.
So, but in the show, it's very linear with each
case. It has to be, because otherwise the audience gets very confused.
So on average, what did your stats average out to in terms of, you get the call, you go investigate the crime. Typically, how long does it? I know it's difficult to say because
it is very difficult to say. Mine was always of the impression that speed kills. Okay, so let's move. We work.
Yeah.
We don't go home. We don't go eat. We don't go to sleep. We don't go anywhere. If there's things to do, let's do things. I would tell my guys and girls the same thing all the time. I say, okay, we have discovered a homicide. Whoever did this has a head start. He's got a head start. He or she is very busy right now. They are distancing themselves emotionally from the event. They're concealing evidence. They are establishing an alibi. They're destroying evidence. They might even be fleeing their jurisdiction. Now, what are we doing? Sitting there with our thumb in our ear?
Yeah.
Let's start doing something. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Let's go to work. And we will work 24, 48 hours, whatever it is, until we're out of things to do. Very often you can turn a case quickly. Sometimes you cannot. My record is 9 years. 9 years to turn an arrest. And I was like, it drove me crazy. I had a guy, and we did an episode on this, whose name is Eric Stanley Houston. Eric Stanley Houston was a pathetic guy, the kind of guy that nobody cared about. He was hit with a car when he was 8 years old, and it scrambled his brain. He never got older than 8, emotionally. But physically, he was okay. He was unable to assess people who were truly his friends and who were just taking advantage of him. His parents were older when he was born. He was like a oops kid.
Yeah.
So his parents died. There's no family to pick up after him. So eventually he gets scooped up by some sort of community program, and they put him in Goodwill Industries. And he has a job. And he lives in a terrible place because it's what he can afford. And half the criminals on the West Side lived in the same place. So they would blame Eric for every criminal thing they did. They would name him as a suspect to the police. He got arrested a lot, but he never got convicted of anything. He never did anything. They would drink his whiskey, spend his money, and basically take advantage of it. And he was 34 years old. He gets stabbed 31 times in his room, and somebody steals a $40 radio from him. A vicious attack. And nobody cared. The press didn't care. Nobody cared. Some goodwill guy, But I cared. And I worked that case, and I worked it, and I worked it. And I got a new guy into homicide years later. Brand new kid. And I said, hey, I want you to work this lead in the Houston case. Well, that's that guy in the motel from the West Side from years ago. I said, yeah, it is. Well, nobody cares about him. And everybody else that heard him say that goes, ooh.
Wrong thing to say.
Yeah, and they started drifting, and I turned as white as your shirt, and I looked at him, don't you ever say that to me. Don't ever say that. If you ever say that again, or if I ever think you think that again, I'm going to have you at the airport running tickets from midnight date with Tuesdays and Thursdays off. Am I clear on that? Yes, sir. I said, now go work that lead. Yes, sir. Okay. 9 years go by, we turned it. First DNA case in Colorado, that case. DNA was new stuff then.
Well, how else would your work be different now? If you were starting now, how else would your work be different?
There are better forensic techniques available today. DNA has advanced dramatically from what it was to begin with. Advanced enormously compared to what it was then. Okay. There would be some helpful things that would come out of it, but ultimately, murders are resolved through conversation. People kill people. They do so for a reason. It may be a completely insane reason, but it's a reason. Find the reason, find the guy. Okay. Now, forensics plays a role. It does. But it's not magic. It isn't magic. It never has been magic. They all claim it's magic. Some of the forensic people, not all of the forensic people, but some of them do. That, we will tell you, I had a laboratory, a private lab, years ago. I had a sample of a product, I don't know what it was, that we found on the victim's body. No one else knew what it was. The coroner looked at it, he said, I don't know what that is. It could be a food product, I don't know. Nobody seemed to know. The lab said, we don't know. We're afraid if we try to test it, we'll destroy the sample. So there's a specialized lab in Chicago that for $10,000 American dollars will be happy to tell you what this is. All right. So I sent it to them. And they're oh, by God, So 3 or 4 days go by, and I call them back. So what's up? Well, the moon was in the right phase, and the stars were in alignment, and we didn't get a result. And you don't get 10 grand either. I pay for success, And that was the end of that. So some people talk a better game than they play, but there are useful things that can be gained from forensic science. Not everything is as useful as you might think it would be. For example, I find your fingerprints in the murder scene. Your prints are on the desk. The victim is dead on the floor behind the desk. Your prints are on the desk. By God, go arrest that guy Hardwick. His prints are on that desk, the murdering son of a bitch.
It wasn't me.
And that's what you say when you get there, and you say, you might be right, because then we discover that you had been in that place 2 weeks earlier talking to that person on the other side of that desk. There is no way to determine the age of a fingerprint. Right. Okay? If you recovered a letter written by Napoleon to Josephine and fumed it and got Napoleon's fingerprint, and you rolled one right next to it and fumed it, they'd look identical. Except one has been there for 140 years. And the one's been there for a minute.
Yeah.
Amino acid is amino acid. That's what's in the fingerprints. So the fact that they are there doesn't necessarily mean anything. They have to be there at the time the crime was committed. Okay. And then it becomes meaningful, but it's still circumstantial evidence.
Sure.
That's all it is. You still have to tell a convincing story. You have to, going to court. Remember years and years and years ago, they sold numbered paintings for kids. It was a canvas that had little blocks with numbers in it. You take the numbered paints and you put in the number, pretty soon you have a painting. Mm-hmm. Everybody, therefore, becomes an artist, right? Okay, whatever. In front of a jury, you show them this canvas with numbers. And you explain to that jury, not in these words, but you explain to the jury, when I'm done, I'm going to paint a picture of how this crime occurred and who's responsible. And when I get through with this picture, it's going to be a picture of him. The guy sitting at the defendant's table. It won't be a picture of anybody else. It won't be a picture of somebody that looks like him. It'll be him. That's the point. So when I would take a case to court, I had 217 trials for first-degree murder. I lost 2. I shouldn't have lost them, but I did. So I was 215-2.
Jesus.
The same football analogy. A football team, 215-2, or a dumb shit who can't convict 2 people of murder. Depends on how you look at it. All right.
Was one of them the guy who
Went out of an office, yes, and I have an alibi. I want you to know I have an alibi for that. So, I didn't push him out of one.
No, but I remember the episode. You seemed so satisfied when you said like a month later he fell out of a window, and you go, "It turns out he don't bounce too good."
No, he didn't. NYPD back in the day, NYPD took a Polaroid picture of him with his broken head on the sidewalk, and they sent it to me. And there was a writer for the show or somebody in the room when I did this. Because when I do, I just talk. Like we're doing right here.
Yeah.
And then they edit to fit into what they're going to do. But it's just me, right? So I had that picture, and I kept it on my desk for 7 years. And I was having a bad day. I'd pull that picture out, and I would look at dead Jimmy, and I would feel better.
Wow.
That guy didn't like that. He got up and left the room. I thought, what's the matter with him? No. Whatever. But yeah, that guy had it coming. Got it?
So was this guy that got up and left the room was like, how can you celebrate?
Yeah.
So how do you answer that question?
I don't.
You don't have to, I guess.
I don't have to. Yeah, I don't have to answer that question. People ask me, how do you feel about punishments? Well, I'm not in the punishment business. I'm in the arrest business. I bring people into a courtroom, and you're on the jury. 12 people sitting there, and I've got this guy. Here he is. Let me tell you what he did. Okay? We'll start with that. Let me tell you what he did. What happened? Here's what happened. Let me tell you how I know that he did that. And then we can do that. Now, what do you think you ought to do about it? Something for you to consider. Want to give him a silver star? Want to shoot him? What do you think? Now, while you're considering that question, stay here, because I'm going to go get another one. And I'll be back. And we'll go through this exercise again. Right? But I'm not in the punishment business.
Were you ever worried? I mean, you were always sure every time you had the right guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if ever I wasn't, I wouldn't arrest him.
So you really had to... I find that one of the difficult things is to learn to listen to your gut. Because how do you know? Sometimes your gut can be clouded by emotion, it can be clouded by doubt, it can be clouded by...
and that's
so how do you push that out of the way and know?
Because you maintain your professional approach. You don't get emotional. You don't get emotional. You can't afford emotion. Emotion is too expensive. You can't get upset. You can't get irate. You can't get the syndrome that if I ever go to sleep, the bad guys are going to take over the world. Oh, no. This is a profession. Treat it like one. What do we know about this guy? Well, we know this. Okay, well, that's not good for him. That's not good. It's not meaningful particularly, but it has some meaning. What else do we know? Well, we know this. Okay, so we had that on this block on top of that block, and then now we know this. Okay, so now we got these things, and this, and this. Well, no. Now it is meaningful. Let's talk to him. Hi. I almost always got a statement out of people. Sometimes I didn't. but almost always I did. Confession to the crime. That's what I wanted. Tell me. Tell me what you did. I already know what you did. What, do you think I am, a moron? I didn't figure you out? Tell me. So that interrogation techniques are something you learn over time. They're different for everyone. You have to find something that you're comfortable with, that you're okay with, that you can do differently than everybody else, that works for you. Your technique is what works for you. I never raised my voice to people. I never used profanity. I was always very nice. But I would get to the bottom of what was going on, which was the point. And I would disarm people if I could. I would distract them. An example, I have a guy who's handcuffed. He's naked to the waist. He's got prison tattoos all over him. He is an asshole. He is covered in sweat. He is pissed. He's so mad he's shaking, sitting in the interrogation room and waiting to unload in the first cop he sees or anybody that walks through the door. So I walk in the door and I threw a notebook on the desk and I sat down on the floor and I put my arms out behind me and I started working, rolling my shoulders. I didn't say anything to him. And now he's not mad. Now he's looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's got his cuffs behind. He just got this quizzical look on his face, but he's not screaming and he's not yelling profanities. He's just like, "What are you doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "You ever have trouble with your back?" God, my back's killing me. And you know what he said? Well, yeah, I've had trouble with my back. Well, all right.
So you're disrupting his.
I'm disrupting his plan.
Yeah.
His focus is to scream and yell.
It's the same thing that happens.
Or you say to someone who's, the people's greatest line of defense is an offense. I mean, it's where fear drives anger. It does. You're angry and yelling at somebody because you're afraid. That's your defense from the fear. Okay? So you expect to be yelled at in interrogation rooms. You do. So you have to take that away from them so that you lessen the fear and you drop the screaming.
Oh, I never.
Okay, lessen the fear, drop the screaming. Okay?
That's fascinating.
So if you say to the guy, I don't even understand why you're here. It's probably some misunderstanding. Perhaps I can help you if you just tell me what happened. Emphasis on the word perhaps. Of course.
Right. Right.
They tell you their story. Okay? Whatever it is. They pour it out because they think, hey, maybe I can get past this guy. Because he's nice. Cops aren't nice. Maybe this one's dumb. Yeah, maybe I am. Talk to me. So they tell you there's this incredible story, and of course they're lying their ass off. Of course they are. You don't write it down. You don't take notes. There's no recording in the room, but I remember every word you say to me. Wait a couple hours. Friendly, Now we're in a bar. We're not in a police station anymore. We're just having a conversation, and we're yapping. And I say, for me to help you, I really have to present your story to other people, my boss, and I'm having trouble remembering some of the things you said. Could you tell me again? Of course, they can't tell you again because they invented the first story. So they try. They really try, but there's always changes. Something subtle is different. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that first lie. Now you want to change from Mr. Nice Guy to the Antichrist. Now it's like, hey, well, my. An hour ago you said this. Now you say this. Were you lying then? Are you lying now? or are you just a fucking liar? And you see the face change. You know, like, what happened to my friend? Where's my friend?
Now you're throwing them off balance.
Yeah, the same thing. You keep somebody off balance. He's already afraid. You lessen the fear, you bring it back. You lessen it again. Maybe I misunderstood you. Tell me again.
It's shocking.
So it's a game.
It's amazing to me to hear that none of the show that you just sit down and start talking, that you remember that many details about every single case. Because it really does, when you're telling the story again, it really does look like you're living it again.
It's true, I do. I'll tell you why I do, because this doesn't happen in 6 hours. You live with a murder case for 2 years. It's 1 or 2 years before you ever get in front of a jury. Motions to suppress, motions for this, motions for that. Defense arguments says this procedural mistake was made. What do we do about this? And on and on and on. You babysit the families. You talk to everybody all the time, the moms and the dads and the husbands and the wives, and you keep everybody on an even keel, and you try to keep this all together. So you relive this story for all that time. It is very, very intense, and when that happens, you don't forget. I am blessed in a way with a good memory. I remember everything. Okay? That served me well in my line of work. My kids never liked it much because I remembered all the things that they said and the things they didn't do.
Tell me the story again about what happened at school.
Bring that up. My daughter one time, she's like 10 years old. She says, "That's not fair." I said, "What's not fair?" "You didn't remember everything." "Well, I'll have to write that down. I'm so sorry." Yeah, but it's funny, but so that's what you do, and then you do remember, and you do relive it because you didn't want to at the time, maybe, I guess. I mean, my wife, when this initially started, this show, I wasn't interested. They came to me, somebody came to me and wanted me to do this. Not they, but a guy, who was a guy who had the concept. He's a producer. Right? I ignored him. I wasn't interested. My wife said, "You need to call that guy." I said, "No. No, you need to call him." I said, "I'm not going to do that." "Why would I do that?" That went on for a couple of days. Finally, she said, "Because I think it'd be good for you." "I think it would be good for you, and I think you should call him." "All right, I'll call him." So I called a guy, and he wanted to put me on film. Okay, I've never done that before, but sure, why not? So I went to Denver. He had obtained a warehouse in the projects in a bad part of town, but he had gotten used to the place, and he thought it was visually interesting, all that sort of thing. And he had a camera guy there and a sound guy. And so, okay, he's ready to film, but he's nervous. He doesn't know me. I don't know him at all. He remembers me from seeing me on the news and seeing me with Diane Sawyer once on a deal. And I was on Turning Point one time on a murder case. And he never forgot that. So but he didn't really know me. So he's nervous because, of course, this is his money and his time and his whatever. And he says, "Well, I want you to think of the camera's your friend," and he drones on and on. And finally I said, "Patrick, what? Turn that on." and asked me what you want to ask me. And so he said, oh, well, and he didn't say anything for about 2 minutes. And finally he said, tell me about murder. Okay. So I did for an hour and a half, whatever came into my head. And an hour and a half, I reached the stopping place, and I stood up, and I said, is that what you had in mind? And he's standing there with his mouth open, and the camera guy's got his mouth open, and I thought, this didn't go well. Let me ask you again, is that what you had in mind? You know, and he says, oh, yeah.
Which Patrick, by the way?
Patrick Bryant.
Oh, okay, because I feel like I know there's a production company in Denver, and I'm wondering if I know this company that brought you.
He worked at the time for High Noon.
High Noon, yeah, it was High Noon. Mm-hmm.
He worked for them, but he didn't do this for them. He did it on his own.
Uh-huh.
He had left the company. And he started this thing on his own because he felt that he had the necessary skill to do it, and he was right. He did, right? So then we put together the pitch reel, the 6-minute thing, and he spent a very long time trying to sell it. So it's the old story, you got to get in front of the right face, and he did. And here we are, 5 seasons later.
Almost 6.
6 starting soon. Yes, right.
Do you think you're going to get through all 356?
Who knows? I mean, we'll see what happens. You know, it's been good for me. I mean, it does. I do feel better. I do. And that's worth it to me. What is weird to me, still weird to me. People recognize me. People want my autograph, you know, and it's like, what? You talking to me? I just don't think that's real somehow. I don't see myself as a famous person, I suppose. I guess. You know, I just don't.
6 seasons is more than most people get in the television business. I mean, that's
I understand. I know all that. You know, and even Kathy Meyer looks at me. She said, is this really happening? Yes, it is really happening. You know
why? It's because people are connecting with you. They're connecting with you because it's, you know, like I said before, it's a perspective on where you know, but people are desensitized to cinematic violence. I don't think most people are desensitized to actual violence.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
And to see, you know, especially, I notice you get particularly emotional when there are kids involved.
Yes.
Which for the obvious reasons, number one, because they're kids and they're innocent and they don't deserve that. And number two, you have kids.
Right.
And so, was it ever a difficult decision to say, like, how can I stay in this business when I know I have kids and I know, you know, like that does create an emotional.
It drove me to the end, to where I knew it was time to go. I had reached my emotional limit, and I had to go. Guy who was 74 years old, who sexually assaulted his 5-year-old grandson. Jeez. And I had run out of detectives. We were just having a bad day, and sex crimes was one of the units I ran in major crimes, and they said, hey, Lieutenant, we're going to have anybody talk to this guy. All right, I'll take that guy. You know, you talk to this other guy. And he said to me, I said, why did you do that to that little boy? said he came on to me.
Oh my God.
And I don't remember anything after that until I heard one of my guys saying, Lieutenant, Lieutenant. And I was strangling this guy.
Jesus.
I was. He was turning blue, and I was going to kill him. And I didn't know. I was like, I'd lost it. Right? And I dropped him, and I said, get him medical, and I gotta go. And I went to my office and typed up a memorandum that said I return.
Right there.
Yep. Went home and told the wife, it's your turn. You know, we had another incident where I had come home. I called her as I had a shooting involving an automatic weapon. And it took me 5 days to figure out who did that. And I said, I'm going to go get this jerk with the machine gun, and I'll be late. As I had done hundreds of times, I told her that on the phone. She said, okay. So I come bebopping in the door. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and all the lights are on. That's not normal, She never is up that late. And I look around the corner, she's sitting in the living room, and she's got a drink in front of her, which is very rare. And she's crying. And I thought her mother died. Her mother hadn't been well. And I said, what is the matter with you? And when she's really pissed at me, she calls me by my last name. And she points her at me and says, Kenda, I can't wait for you to come home anymore. Yes, ma'am. Her turn. Now, it took me 2 years to lose the venom. All right. 2 years. And I was sitting in my kitchen one morning, drinking a cup of coffee, and my wife says, hi. I looked at her and I said, in case you haven't been paying attention, dear, I've been sitting here for 2 hours. She said, I know, but you're the guy I married again.
Oh my gosh. And that took 2 years.
I thought that was very nice.
That's wonderful.
I know, but yeah, 2 years. 2 years. Oh, yeah. Why would she would go to doctors' parties and hospital functions, because we've had the obligatory political.
Sure.
Show up, and should bring me. Well, everybody knew who I was because I was on the news all the time, and so I'd walk into a party and the temperature would drop 30 degrees, and everybody would flush, every toilet in the building would flush because they're all flushing their dope down the toilet. And then everybody's looking at their watch, boy, it's 8 o'clock, I gotta go, And pretty soon there's like crickets in this party, and she'd look at me and say, you're a real buzzkill. Yeah, I guess I am, I'm sorry, so And there was another occasion where we wanted to go dancing. She wanted to go dancing. And I was like, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, let alone dance. But she said, I want to learn a country dance, and you're going to go with me. She's ripped, And I thought, what? I just walked in. I mean, please, don't get mad. What's it? Well, this other nurse and I, and her husband, and do I know her? No. But we're going to go to this bar, and they have a deal if you order 2 drinks. Then they teach you this dance for free. Western dancing. All right. Fine. So we go. We're not there 2 minutes. And this girl who I meet, who's my wife's age at the time, 38, 39. Hello, how are you? And who's this? My husband, who's like 22. Hello. So he wanders off. Kathy goes to get a drink or something. This woman immediately says to me, I need to talk to you about my daughter. What about your daughter? Well, I've been having a lot of trouble with her, and how old's your daughter? 17.
Welcome to the Nerdist Podcast number 778. This episode of the Nerdist Podcast brought to you by... When you go to these crime scenes, I mean, what was the most unexpected part about all of it? Now that from when you started to now, what was something that you just wouldn't know unless you were in it?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that, really, but I guess what people don't really understand is that probably, I would say that it's reasonable to say that they don't understand that humans have no limits. There are no limits to what someone will do. None. Animals kill for need. Humans kill for pleasure. Totally different thing. But there is absolutely no limit to the depravity, the violence, the things that people will do to other people that occur nowhere else in the natural world. Nowhere else.
So knowing that, how do you find joy? How were you able to find joy? I know it's not going to a dance.
No, that didn't work out so well. So I was careful not to associate with other policemen. I had a professional life and a personal life, and I didn't let the two mix. My friends all did something else. I have a guy who was a warrant officer in the Army. He was an IT guy in the Army. Another guy was an airline pilot. Another guy was a cabinet maker. I mean, all kinds of different people are my friends. So we'd have parties. We'd go to their parties. We'd talk about what it's like to be an airline pilot or what it's like to do that or whatever. So it gives you a sense of the fact that the world is really okay,
Yeah.
and that there's only a small percentage of the world with which you spend 100% of your time.
Right.
And if you're not careful, then you begin to believe the world's like that. Well, it isn't like that. So that was my defense against the kinds of people I spent time with. And I was able to find a lot of enjoyment out of that, and a lot of just let everything go away, and let's talk about what you do, or let's talk about this event, or let's talk about whatever. The kids with their sports activities. My kids got involved in every sport there was known to man, and and Kathy and I would spend a lot of time with them, and it was great fun. But I never had pictures of anybody in my office. I had pictures of my kids, I had pictures of my wife, nothing. Everything about me. They knew I was the boss. That's all they knew. I never wore a wedding ring when I worked. I was just this guy, all right? So my wife had never been in a police station in the main headquarters building, never been in there. My office on the second floor of the police operations center. She'd never been in the building. But my daughter goes to college. She goes away to CU Boulder. It's about a 2.5 hour drive from Colorado Springs. So she goes to the main campus, University of Colorado. And she gets in a snit with a roommate. It's a cat fight between two 18-year-old girls. And the housing people think this is the worst thing since the Second World War. They call my wife, oh my God, there's been this problem. Okay, all right. So you couldn't get me on the phone. You couldn't do it. So she came down to the building to tell me she was going to drive to Boulder and that she wouldn't be there when I get home. And that's where she would be, because my son is already away at school. So there's nobody there but her. So she walks up to the front desk, and they have people that work there. They're not cops, but they're women that work for the police department. They're police service representatives, they greet the public, and yes, can we help you? And she says, well, I need to speak to Lieutenant Kenda. She said, do you have an appointment? She said, I don't need an appointment. I'm his wife. The word travels like wildfire that not only is Kenda married, but it's in the building. Now it's this. Everybody's looking around the corner. It's like, is it a girl? What do we think? You know what I mean? And it was so weird. So by the time I get downstairs, she's like backed in a corner. I said, what's the matter? She said, everybody's looking at me. I said, I want to see if you're a girl. Come on, let's go upstairs. It was so funny. She was really like, ooh, that was creepy, because it was kind of creepy. But, it was a new experience for them, So.
I brought my fiance Lydia because we watched the show together, and we started watching the show together because she said it came on once. She said, I used to watch the show with my dad all the time. She and I lost our dads within a month of each other. We weren't dating yet. We weren't even dating yet. But we lost our dads within a month of each other. Lydia's dad had a long battle with cancer. My dad dropped dead of a heart attack. But it was within a month of each other. And it was oddly, a lot of the subject of our first date was talking about our dads dying. And then ultimately, we had this fun. And so, for her, watching your show was very much a bonding experience with her dad, because your dad was he
was a private investigator and worked for the chief of police in San Francisco, and one of his partners actually was the guy who did all the milk killings.
Do you want to say that on the microphone so people can hear you?
Really?
Just say it on the microphone so people can hear you, because otherwise it's just going to be in the background and you're going, what did she say?
What'd she say?
Yeah, your dad was a private investigator.
Yeah, my dad was a police officer and private investigator in San Francisco in the 70s, and one of his partners, I guess, right when he filed to get his partners changed, it was the guy during all the Harvey Milk killings.
All right.
And I just remember my dad very much just spoke very similarly to the way you did, and I just remember him being like, yeah, that guy was a bastard, everybody hated him. And he was just very, very blunt, and I very much appreciate your incredible zingers.
So it's been kind of a bonding experience, it was a bonding experience for Lydia's family, and then now it's kind of our bonding experience. And it's a strange thing to go to sleep to every night. We almost always watch your show, right? Like I said, right in a minute. And there are sometimes I'm like, why are we watching horrible murders? But it really, I mean, you really do give it all a very human and I feel like a very respectful perspective.
That's certainly what I want to do. It's very difficult to, as you know, you're in the business of television, to tell a very complicated story in 43 minutes and 50 seconds. It's very difficult. If you were to present a murder case as it happened, the show would last for 16 weeks and nobody would watch it because it would make you crazy. You get on this rabbit warren, it's the wrong one. This rabbit warren, no. This guy, well, he was in jail when this happened. He's not the guy, he's in jail. And on and on. Those are the things that really happen. So what I do is I select the highlights of the case and I talk about those. I don't talk about everything because there's no time to talk about everything. It would be very distracting to someone.
Sure.
It's kind of like, my office was kind of like my car. It was the Tower of Babel, I had 5 microphones in my car on the sun visor connected to 5 different phones or radios. And I'd be carrying on conversations with all 5 of them all the time. The office was like the phones are ringing. There's 8 guys standing in line. Hey, what about this guy? Yeah, do this. It was just that way constantly. So now that I retired, I have a car that has this whoop-de-doo jukebox in it, it's supposed to do everything in the world, and it's, iPod, iPad, whatever, it's do this, do that, oh man, push this button, the world comes to you alive and in color, and so I sold the car. It was time to get another one, and I sold the car, and I said, how's that radio work? I said, I don't know. So I assume it works. It's brand new. It's never been turned on. Because I want silence.
Of course you want silence.
I don't want to hear, 16-channel police radios, and I don't want to hear that. I just don't. I just want it to be quiet. I get my wife's car, the first thing I do is turn the radio off, because she always has it on. Think.
Yeah, it's constant noise, I would imagine. It's
just noise. To me, it's just noise.
Even little details like, the second the phone would ring in the middle of the night was never good news, and you said you would always try to grab it as quickly as it started to ring so it wouldn't wake the family. I mean, those are just things that people don't really think about.
No, my wife didn't work there. My kids didn't work there either. The phone rings in the middle of the night, it wakes people up. So I try to get it before it half ring or something like that, The strangest thing I ever had is really strange. I had a police car that I would take home. And I always parked it outside, of course, because I'm going to park the police car inside. My car goes inside. So anyway, the car's outside. And it was 1:30 in the morning. And I get up, and the phone's ringing. The usual. Those people are wide awake. They're working.
Right.
Could you give me a second here? What? Where is it? I went out to the car, and I thought, what time is it? Because it was a full moon. It was so bright. It was like daylight. And then, no, it's 1:30 in the morning. Okay, It was so bright I could see the key lock in the door in the moonlight. So, Well, at night, when I'd come home, I'd turn everything, I just turned the car off, and everything would shut off. The commercial radio, all the police radios. I always listen to rock and roll music. I like rock and roll. But I had that on the radio all the time. So when I started the car, everything lights up, everything comes on, including the commercial radio. And that just beat before they play a song, the beats on the radio.
Yeah.
And they started playing Bad Moon Rising, CCR. And I thought, I didn't know Fogerty was a prophet. I'm looking up at that moon through the windshield. They were calling me out there, 1X31. That was my radio sign. I'm busy right now. I'm listening to this song. It's go out tonight. It might take your life. Yeah, well, no kidding. That's why I'm doing here. You know what I mean? I thought that was busy.
On your way to see something really horrible, probably.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, I hope that you're able to sleep some now. I mean, has the show helped with any of the 5 nightmares?
No, but it's helped me sleep better.
When they happen, in your dream, are you conscious? Oh, it's this again, or do you?
Well, no, yeah, you are, and what's really the thing about PTSD, unless you've experienced it, you don't understand this part of it. But the best description I can offer is during the day, you're not asleep, you're not in bed. PTSD is having a nightmare while you're awake. It's very bizarre. Something will trigger it. I was watching the news one night, and it was a very nice little story about a policewoman in Rochester, New York, who had a program after school teaching disadvantaged kids how to read. And she was teaching kids how to read. Great thing, right? 20 years before I watched that news broadcast, I had a violent incident involving a little kid. And when that news thing came on, and she said, "This is one of my students," it was that kid. It wasn't that kid, but it was that kid. And it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. And I got out of the chair and I walked out. I'm a cat. I gotta go outside. I have to go outside. And she's learned to just leave me alone at that moment. But that's what I mean. I mean, it's just something triggers it. A smell, a noise, something. And you're right back in the moment for just a few seconds. Not for an extended period of time, just a few seconds. And it's so weird. And you stop and you go, wait a minute. It's okay, all right. No, it's not happening now. It happened. It's not happening now. It's really is.
Well, because your emotional, the emotional part of your brain has probably no concept of time, so it's just there.
It's just there. Yeah, I know.
Just waiting to get stepped on,
of course. Like somebody. Hey, let me push that button. See what happens. All right. And that's what it does sometimes. But it's the price you pay for the work. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. But that is the price you pay for the work. It's that level of intensity that just, doing what I did for 23 years and 6 months equates to doing what anybody else does for about 110 years. Combat is incredible violence very quickly. 15 months, 12 months, 15 months, combat tour, you're back, right? Police work is a slow dance of violence. Not every day, but a slow dance. Not 12 months, 15 months, 23 years, and 6 months. It just never really stops. And you're expecting it to, wanting it to, wishing it would, knowing it won't, until you finally say, as I did, enough. I can't do this. I'm done. And I was. Leave at the top of your game. I was there Friday, I wasn't there Monday.
Then you have to spend the next however many years sifting through all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I put people in a cage and need to be there. Most of them are still there. Some of them died in that cage. So what?
So at the end of the day, you did your job.
I did my job. That's what I was proud of. Now, I was fair with people. Always fair. I never treated anybody badly. I never did. But I could be ruthless when I needed to be. And if I thought you knew something I needed to know, and you wouldn't tell me, I would be ruthless. And I would tell you that. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take your kids away from you. I'm going to do anything I can to make your life suck until you decide to tell me what you know. You often get inmates who will send you a letter. It's called a kite in the prison world. You send a kite fly over the wall. And they know that, of course, they go to prison. They realize they don't like prison. Understandable. They're there for 8 months or so, and they said, Jesus, I got to get out of here. So they send up, we won't answer that, so they're getting turned off. That's okay. Just stop. I don't know.
The important thing is it's not the station calling.
It's not them. So they send you this letter, and they say, I know about a murder, because they know it'll get your attention.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes they actually do, but most of the time they don't. They think they can hustle their way into something, get some kind of a deal from you, So I'd go to the prison. And I'm phoning up a reason that I'd be in a warden's office or whatever, So the inmates don't know what they're doing, because the snitch jacket is not a good thing. If you're an informant, you're going to die, in a prison. So you get them in there for the pretext, and you go talk to them. And they're always, usually, particularly if they don't know anything, they're arrogant. You're here. Yes, I'm here. So, what's the deal? Well, I have certain things I have to. Oh, of course, you have a list of demands. Yes. Well, why don't you write them down? Because I don't want to miss anything. So here, write it down on this legal pad. Write it down right there. Okay. Well, I want to get out of prison today. Well, of course you do. I need money. Well, not a problem. I want to be the district attorney. I want to be secretary with big tits. Yeah, of course we can do all that. So we get down and through all this. All right, fine. Okay. Are you sure? Are you done? Well, yeah. Are you absolutely sure that there's nothing else? No. So it's my turn. Well, yeah. Okay. Let me tell you something, convict. You have 60 seconds to tell me something I don't know. And if you can't tell me something I don't know in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to go to that microphone over there and I'm going to tell the yard that you're in here talking to me.
Oh, shit.
They'll kill me. Exactly. By the way, you're down to 45 seconds. You still have demands. I play this game. I'm good at this game. All right.
They're just trying to get something.
Sure.
Yeah.
They want to tell you something they heard in the yard. Good as that. Nothing. Hearsay? Not admissible. Tell me you're a participant. Tell me you know the participant. That's different. But tell me you heard this and heard that. I don't care what you heard. But they think that's their ticket. That they heard this. Somebody said something, and they overheard it. Oh, please. Get out of here.
I mean, it's fun having you on the podcast because you talk I just feel like you are you in any scenario. Whether you're on a podcast, I'm thrilled to know that there's 10 episodes of a detective podcast. But
there is. We just did that. I did them all in 5.5 hours.
Jesus.
Just,
So people should listen to that. They should watch Homicide Hunter on Investigation Discovery. Is it Tuesday night? Is it Tuesday nights at Tuesday night at 9? Tuesday nights at 9. Thank you, Deb.
It goes back to 10 o'clock on January 5th.
Okay.
It has been at 9 o'clock Eastern. And January the 5th, it goes to 10 o'clock. Tonight was new. The next 2 weeks are repeats because of the holidays. Everybody's off. And then the new ones begin again January 5th. But it'll be at 10 o'clock and not at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So,
well, I have to thank you for doing the show.
Of course.
Well, I don't know if it's an of course. I mean, it's a pretty fucked up thing to have to live through again. But I hope it helps you. I really hope it helps you. And also, I have to thank you, and I hope people thank you for putting. You say in the beginning, ultimately you say, and you said it here too, you're speaking up for the victims, and you sacrifice a substantial amount of your life and a substantial amount of your emotional well-being for other people.
I did, but I understand something. I wasn't drafted. I volunteered. Okay?
I know.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Didn't mean you had to do it for 23.5 years.
It did to me. I did it for me. I've never cared what anyone else thinks of me. I only care what I think of me. I only care what I think of me. If I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and I like that guy I see, we're good.
And doing your job helped you do that.
Yes. And you can hate me or you can do whatever, you can think whatever you want about me. I could care less. I really could care less. It's what I think of me. That's what matters. And that's why I did this. I did this for me, and I need to thank me. People say thank you for your service. You don't need to thank me. You paid me. You paid your taxes. They paid me every 2 weeks. It all worked out in the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not necessarily to thank me, because I wasn't forced into this deal. I selected it because I thought it was meaningful, and I wanted to do something meaningful. And I think this was. To me, it was.
Well, thank you for letting us take as much of the journey as we can possibly take through a television show. We will be watching every week, and when that, it's today, Lydia texted, "There's a new Kenda on tonight. There's a new Kenda on tonight."
Yes, and I missed it too. Oh well. Now, I'll tell you, that was a weird experience for me about the TV show. The first time I saw myself on television, it was startling. I was like, "Jeez!" And my wife said, "That's you." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It was very weird.
Still in a bunch of stuff.
It still is.
Of course, it's weird. It's a very strange thing. It's a very strange thing. I've been doing it for 20 years, and it's still strange. Still feels weird to see. Like, what am I doing up there? That's weird. I sound like that? Like,
I know, that's the other thing. Everybody talks about my voice, and to me, it's just my voice. But it sounds different when I hear it over a microphone.
Of course it does.
Then I hear it.
Yeah, it echoes off your head, your own
whatever. Who knows? Of course, and you listen to it on TV and says, "Do I sound like that?" Yeah, you do. No, it's weird.
Homicide Hunter, Investigation Discovery, Lieutenant Joe Kenda. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Enjoy your burrito, everyone. Actually, you should tell everyone to enjoy your burrito. This is how we end the podcast. It's a joyful message.
It's a joyful message.
Enjoy your burrito.
Enjoy your burrito.
Yes.
Please. On my behalf and in my honor, enjoy your burrito.
Done. Oh. This is actually very ceremonious. This is my last podcast of the year. Then I go on vacation. I never take vacation.
Awesome.
But I'm actually getting
good for you.
Yeah.
Take vacation.
I don't.
I took vacation.
Instead of going
Well, congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So where are you going to do it?
Yeah, we didn't want to be those people who expect everyone to make a destination wedding. We were like,
And it's not even, it's only 3 hours outside of LA too, so it's not really destination.
It's not, but it's still kind of a pain in the ass. Like, we wanted the wedding to be
We wanted everyone to have fun.
We wanted to have fun. We wanted people to be able to
Weddings are supposed to be fun. They're not supposed to be formal. People have a great time at weddings. If it's like that, people enjoy the wedding. They do. Everybody has a good time.
Right.
And if you make the other thing, it's like, where do I put can I cross my legs? What do you think? I mean, it's human nature. And, you can make it too formal.
Oh, yeah. Make it too formal, or, we're going to do quick ceremony. Get to the party parts, just try to have it be not put too many demands.
I told my wife, I said, we have to get married again, because all the stuff we got for our wedding is broken. We need more stuff,
Yeah, there's been a lot of technological advancements since you got married.
So this year will be 48 years.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
It seems like it's been about 6 weeks.
When you're back.
Kathy is Irish, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, has a temper like a child. So I don't understand her, but I'm working on that.
You'll figure it out. Sooner or later,
I just have to avoid the narrow blue eyes.
Oh, well then, actually, this is a really good opportunity. You've been married 48 years.
Irish, natural blonde, dyed it up, but I got green eyes.
There you go.
What did you do a successful marriage? You were married for 48 years.
You talk to each other because you change. And people make a mistake of changing apart instead of together, I think. Sure. Some people I know that we've known for a long time, their personalities, they adjust by age, by what you're doing, by what you're into, whatever. And if you don't stay in contact with each other, constantly talk about everything, you wake up one morning and say, how was that? And the other person wakes up and says, who's that? I mean, she and I was 15 years old when I met her, so I'm 19 now, so 4 years, several years. But, we've grown together, she and I, over those years. We've had fights, arguments, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And, we went through 2 kids and survived that. Didn't kill our dog. Thought about it. Exactly. Had to stop each other. Between the ages of 12 and 17. I'm a homicide detective. I know how to get away with it. Oh, yeah. I came home from work one day. My wife's looking at me. She just wanted at me. She's Irish temper. She says, I've thought this over. I've considered the consequences, and I'm going to kill her. No, I'm not. Let me go talk. So I go upstairs. She's like 13. I knock on her door. She jerks the door open, looks at me, and I said, what's going on between you and her mom? And she slams the door in my face. No. It's like, okay, now I'm going to kill her. I know where to bury the body. But we survived all that. So did she. So, now we laugh about it, so did she. But nobody was laughing. No.
That's an excellent piece of advice. Can we leave that in the podcast? A good piece of advice to talk.
If you want.
I would love to. I think it's an excellent piece of advice.
It's just what I've observed in my people I know who were a long time married and then broke up. And it's like, what happened to them? I always say Kathy and I both would know. Well, they don't. They pursue different things. They have different interests. They became different people and forgot to tell each other. Happens. It's nobody's fault. It's not some evil thing or anything, but it just happens. You stay together, be together.
There's a promise we will always talk.
You face it together. When there's something going on, good or bad. It's you and her. Nobody else. My wife and I and my 2 kids, the only thing matter to her. Still does.
I'm trying to think there's a side series for you.
Kenda relationship.
Yeah. Wedding Hunter. Marriage Hunter.
Yes. Put your hand on my badge. Okay, the power invested in me by the state of Colorado. You're done.
Now leaving Nerdist.com. Enjoy your burrito.
This episode of the Nerdist Podcast is brought to you by Superstore, a new workplace comedy on NBC starring America Ferrera, Colton Dunn from Key & Peele, Ben Feldman, and Mark McKinney from Kids in the Hall. Critics are hailing it. You should watch it. Premiere of Superstore Monday, January 4th on NBC.